Hey guys, welcome to the inaugural show of the Giant Zone podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Carl, aka Fly Guy. We got Steve the banker, and we got GM George. So, who are we and what are we doing here? Well, every week we plan on getting together and talk anything and everything related to our beloved New York Giants, while including you, our friends and followers, to join in our show, ask us any questions, and share any thoughts and insights that you may have. Every week, we plan to allow a different guest from what we call our fan zone to join us here live on the show. For those of you not on the show that week, we still want to hear what you have to say. We still want to hear your questions or any comments or thoughts that you may have. So what we'd ask you to do is DM them to us at the Giants Zone Twitter page, and that can be found at Giants_Zone 2022. If time allows, then we'll answer it right on the show. And we'll discuss it openly. If not, we'll address it on Twitter. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, again, send us a DM and we'll reach out to you and we'll start scheduling time to be on the show.
Great job, Carl. Well, listen, for everybody watching, thank you again. Each week, we're going to ask three things. When you come on as a guest, just tell us real quick who you are, how you became a fan, and do you have any game trade traditions? We'd love to know. So if we're going to ask you to do that, we thought with our first show, we owe you that as well. So to get things underway, George, why don't you start off letting everyone know who you are, how you became a fan, and do you have any game day traditions?
What's up, Giants fans? My name's George, aka the GM. A little bit about me, how I became a fan. Well, it's almost 40 years ago, and my dad and I, we used to watch football together, and at the time, he was a Redskins fan when you were allowed to say Redskins. So anyway, that day they were playing the Giants. My favorite color is blue. Got a lot of family up in New York. Been a Giants fan ever since. And that's how it all started. As far as game day traditions, well, it's fairly easy for me. Me and my son, we get in our game day jerseys. We sit back, relax, watch a little football. I'll smoke some meat on the rec tech, or I'll throw some meat on the charcoal grill, have some friends over, enjoy ourselves, a few beers, a lot of meat, and just enjoy some good Giants football. Well, I'm hoping it's good this year. Anyway, Giants fans, that's a little bit about me. Welcome to the Giants Zone. All aboard. Fly Guy, take it away.
Thanks, George. That sounded good too, by the way. It got me a little hungry there. So guys, I'm Carl, again, Fly Guy. I was raised in a home of Giants fans. So becoming a Giants fan for me was just a natural progression. I grew up literally about 5 minutes from Giant Stadium, look out my bedroom window, and there was Giant Stadium off in the distance. There were many Sundays where my brother and I would walk along the service road that's adjacent to Route 3. We'd walk up and over the Berries Creek Bridge, through the parking lots to the gates where we scalped tickets. And as we all know back then, tickets were much less expensive, much more affordable via scalp. So my brother and I got into a good number of games doing that for many, many years. As far as game day traditions go, our family had very simple traditions, but they were special to us. For the pregame show, my father would make Italian sub sandwiches, heroes, call it what you want. And then after the game, it was my mother's homemade gravy, or sauce, again, depending on whether or not you call it one or the other, macaronis, and our homemade meatballs. Again, they were simple times, but to this day, they're great memories. What I look forward to most about this show is meeting many of you and hearing your thoughts and opinions about the Giants. You, our friends and followers, you're what makes this show special to us. You're the reason why we've decided to do this. And we all agreed that we only wanted to do it if we can all have you be a part of it. Our goal, along with the help and support of all of you, is to create a platform, a community of Giants fans that Giants fans want to be a part of, just to kind of get together and talk Giants football. As you could see, we're just normal, average guys like the rest of you out there. We just love talking Giants football, and we want to talk to Giants fans. As you guys all know me from my daily Giants questions, I want to take that interaction and I want to bring it here. live and with you and hear you. And I want to feel the vibe. I want to see what you're thinking. So jump on board, guys. Follow us on Twitter at Giants_Zone 2022. Subscribe to our YouTube page where this is going to be. And let's build something special here, guys. We're really looking forward to it. Steve, what about you, buddy?
Thanks, Carl. Well, I'll make it quick, guys, because we definitely want to start talking Giants football. I'm Steve. I'm also known as the Banker on Twitter. I've lived here in South Florida for 20 years. My wife and I moved from New York City. I was born and raised in North Jersey. So I'm a New Yorker, New Jersey through and through, but been in South Florida for 20 years. How I became a fan? Well, I got a confession to make. Shh, don't tell too many people. I was actually a Steelers fan as a kid in the 70s. You can't blame me. The Steelers were great, right? But what did I know? As time went by, I started finding out about the Giants. I started watching their games. And I'd say by 83, I was hooked, just in the nick of time, right? We all know what happened after 83. I would watch the games with my dad. It became a ritual. It became a way for us to spend time together. And as I got a little older, towards late 80s, when I was old enough to work, he had a great idea. He said, why don't I get him a job at Giant Stadium? If any of you know, back then, there was a waiting list to get a job at Giant Stadium. Forget getting tickets. There was a waiting list for jobs. It was a big deal. The Giants were the best show in town. And watching them in person, unless you were lucky enough to get a ticket like Carl with his brother, good luck, right? So for me, it was a triple win. I needed a job. I got to watch my Giants, and I got to spend some quality time with my dad. That was really important. So game day traditions, now with my family, I do all the cooking in my house, and my family has a pact with me. They know, leave me alone. Let me watch my game in peace. Win or lose, I'll have a great meal prepared for them post-game. So listen, enough about me. Let's talk about the Giants. Carl, back to you, man.
Thanks, Steve. And great job, guys. So now we got that out of the way. And now let's get to the heart of why we do this. Let's talk about the Giants. So we've got a new GM in place. We've got a new head coach, a lot of excitement around the team, a lot of things taking place, but there's going to be a lot more change going on this offseason. And with that comes a lot of questions that I'm sure I know we, and I'm sure the rest of you, want to have answers to. So let's dive into some of that, guys. George, why don't you start us off here? And what's something you want to see addressed here in the offseason?
Well, what I'd like to see addressed, somewhat quickly is I want to know who the OC is going to be. You got Dabble as your head coach. He's got an offensive mind. He called plays back in Buffalo. Who's he going to bring in to be his OC to take control of this offense, bring it back to where instead of seeing our defense hold a team to 17 points, well, we can only score 13 or 10 or 6. I want to see who's going to come in and help us put points on that board. That's what I want to know about. And I know there's been some names out there. I know there's a list of mainly 3. But Steve, hit me up, man. Help me out. Talk to me. What do you got?
You got it, brother. Well, listen, I've done my research. I think everybody by now knows the names, right? Pep Hamilton, Mike Kafka, Chad O'Shea. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there in each of them. There's a lot of pros. There's a lot of cons. I think there's 2 out of the 3 that I would love to see personally. Pep Hamilton and Mike Kafka. The way I summarize it is you got 2 guys in their 40s. Kafka is 47, I believe. O'Shea is 49. So I know there's a whole chorus of people out there. I want young. I want this. I get it. Pros and cons, right? Chad O'Shea to me was the least impressive. What's interesting is he's the one who has personal ties to Dable. They've actually worked together in previous stops. But if you look at where O'Shea has been the last 5 years, 6 years, what have you, especially most recently his time in Cleveland, not so great. I think most people would. Now, some people say that's the quarterback, but it is what it is. Their offense hasn't done well. Their wide receiver room was phenomenal. What is that? So I think O'Shea has, you would think, a leg up on the other 2 because of his personal ties to Dable, but we've seen that doesn't necessarily matter. The other 2 guys, Kafka was being groomed in Kansas City. He's apparently, according to all accounts there from some of their existing staff and executives, he was being groomed to be the next OC, but the problem is Bieniemy hasn't been able to move on himself, right? So it's like he has no musical chairs. He has nowhere to go. Hamilton is 47 years old. He's not young, but man, I mean, he's like a quarterback whisperer. He's worked with some great quarterbacks. He's been an offensive coordinator, which is nice. So I've been going back and forth between Kafka and Hamilton. What do you guys think?
You know, it's funny. I actually, out of the three that we've been discussing here, the wild card to me has been O'Shea. And I say that because there is a relationship with Daboll already. And that says to me there are some similarities in thought and approach and philosophy. And you can't argue with the results that we've seen out of Kafka. You cannot, obviously. And Pep Hamilton, we've seen what Pep Hamilton's do. And again, I am not discrediting the work he's done as well. For me, I just think that connection between Chad O'Shea and Brian Daboll really makes O'Shea the wild card here. You could see that they're trying to put pieces together on the staff that they're familiar with, and there's some familiarity with as far as, process, thought, so on and so forth. I wouldn't be at all surprised if it was O'Shea. I wouldn't. Just my thoughts. But again, who knows? George, that was a great question. Steve, what do you have?
So the thing that's been on my mind is everybody's talking about the draft for good reason, because they assume we can't do anything in free agency. And when we talk about free agency, everyone says, oh my gosh, we're at the cap. We got no room. But Shane has made some interesting comments this week. One of which was he said, I want to get 40 million under the cap, right? There's ways to do that. There's restructuring, there's cutting. We could talk about that another time. He's made a bunch of interesting comments in just two press conferences, one formal and one after Daboll's press conference. So it got me to thinking, well, how active is he going to be in free agency?
That's a tough question. And George, I'll start this one off, George, and then I'll kick it off to you. But
Take it.
There's some trains of thought there. We've made the splashy signings and not with the best of results. All right. Jerry Reese did it when he brought, to save his job, and that didn't work out. Gettleman did it. And I think it was kind of the same thing, to be honest with you, to try to save his job. I don't think he was ready to retire. I think he wanted to take a go at it. And, does anybody feel that Kenny Golladay earned $72 million last year? So I could see this being a little bit more of a conservative approach, adding depth. We saw this year a lack of depth at all positions. So I think it's going to go more that way. I don't see the big splashy signing. I think you're going to see more pieces plugging holes and, again, adding depth here. But George, what are your thoughts?
Well, you just said the key word, depth. I mean, I had a plan of what I was going to say in response, but it really is. This year is going to have to be about depth. As we were talking about, we've got to come under that cap. I think it's $40 million we have to cut away with that cap. I mean, we're not going to know what we can do, big splash or no, until we figure out what we're doing with this cap money. I really truly believe that there are going to be some people out there that are going to be very disappointed in guys we're going to lose, and that's just the way this business goes. They can't stay healthy. It's we had so much money, and honestly, I want to throw this in there, a little sidetrack, but I don't know why we brought John Ross in last year, to be honest with you. But anyway, going back, we just can't keep the money on the field. And when you can't keep the money on the field, when you've got, your salary cap sitting on the sidelines on crutches, no matter who you're talking about, you can't expect a team to succeed. It's just not going to happen. And as far as the draft goes, I know everybody's really excited about bringing in offensive linemen and this, that. You have to think about something. If Gates is able to come back, then yes, we're going to have probably 3 rookie offensive linemen with Thomas and Gates. I don't know who the 3 rookies are going to be, but they're going to be rookies. And they're probably going to be on one side of the line. So that right there should tell you that, all this expectations of Daniel Jones improving, what's he going to improve when he's running for his life again? And if, Galladay gets injured, if, Evan Ingram, if he's even still part of the team, if he gets injured, Tony, he how many games did he play last year? I mean, he wasn't even in the game plan for the first 4 weeks. So, it really is going to come down to what kind of decisions we make during cut time before the draft. And that's when we'll obviously, know a little bit more and be able to kind of, dive a little deeper into that sort of question. It's a great question, but yeah, it's something we're definitely going to be looking out for. And yeah, we'll dive into it more after these cuts and everything happen. We've got to get this cap straightened out.
Well, that's actually a perfect segue to what my question was. And the first thing that I want to address is the roster. Who stays and who goes? But I'm gonna jump back to something you mentioned there, George. You said, well, you don't know why John Ross was brought in. How sad is it that he was probably one of our most productive receivers, though, in the limited time that he played?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no doubt. I agree with that.
So it's just, and again, that just goes, we brought in Galladay, never fought for a ball, missed how many games, and John Ross, a perennial injury reserve player, was probably one of our most productive receivers.
It's unreal.
So, such is the state of the Giants. But very quickly, my views on roster management, and I agree with what you said. You both alluded to it that, obviously we've got to trim some fat. There's no 2 ways about it. We're handcuffed right now what we can do because of our cap. And yeah, there are going to be very tough decisions to be made. And there's going to be people that are going to get cut that we're going to be shocked about. We're probably not going to be happy about, but we can't lose sight of what the goal is here. And that's to rebuild and build a winner. Mm-hmm. And I was looking over the roster today and I listed some names, and it's funny because I listed 4 names. And then I actually saw somebody on Twitter earlier today pretty much said exactly what I had written down was we can knock 13 million off the cap right now if we cut Caden Smith, Riley Dixon, Darius Slayton, and Rudolph. So there's 4 right there that saves us 13. And I believe it's 13 million. Okay. But then where do we go from there? And I'm just going to throw some names out there, and then Steve, I'll kick it off to you and give me your thoughts here. I know Soto's a free agent. I believe he is, right? If he's not, he's got to come off the roster. If
Solder's done,
we don't bring him back, right? Will Hernandez
gone.
Bradbury
Trade.
All right, Steve, what do you think?
I think going to be reworked.
Really?
I do.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, that's a very good possibility. He is the, number 1 cornerback we got. We really do need him, but I see a trade.
It's funny.
He plays, and we have 2 top tier corners. Maybe Bradbury didn't play as well as he did the year before. It's a fair. I know I was frustrated at times, but there's not a lot of teams that have better secondary than us.
Darn right.
Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen to Peppers and Carl. I know you're probably going to get to that, but we're going to have Robinson's going to be back healthy. That kid was phenomenal. The 3rd round pick. Oh my gosh.
He hits.
We got great young safeties. So, X-Man, Xavier's. Anyway, but you put 2 great corners out there that allows you to do a heck of a lot up front.
I agree with you, by the way. It gives the edge when we get them more time to get to the quarterback because the quarterback can't throw if everybody's covered. We saw that this past weekend in some of the playoff games. I just had 3 more names, then I'll kick it off to you guys. Blake Martinez.
That's the
He's
tough
going to get reworked.
I agree with you, George. I think that's a rework before Bradbury. Just
Yeah, his leadership is
yes.
Yeah, he's getting reworked.
Yeah.
The only thing I think about with him, and I love him, is, man, I hope he comes back well from his injury.
Yeah.
Because we see what the league is, we see what they do, we see the mistake they made with Rudolph. Get him. He had a little foot thing, but we're the Giants. Yeah, great, good job. How about you send me a check, dingbat? So
our training staff will heal him.
yeah, I hurt my foot. You want to send me a check too? So the point is, I mean, man, look what happened when he went down. Like they don't grow on trees, right? The leader of your defense. So I agree with both you guys, but the only thing is, what if he's not coming back from that injury? I don't even want to think about that. But
yeah. But he's definitely on the bubble. I mean, I don't think we can deny that. 2 more names. Pert.
Who cares?
I'm done with him.
I think
they could ship him out tomorrow, and I won't lose a minute's sleep.
Yeah.
I think he'll come back. He's cheap.
But he's gonna be behind somebody.
He's physically unbelievably talented, like still physical tools. It's what's the neck up, right? But why not bring him back on that cheap rookie contract and just let him compete for depth? To George, to your point.
And can I be honest with you? One thing about Pert, and maybe even a couple other guys on this offensive line, I think this is going to go into another question of mine. But I don't think they had good coaching.
Yes.
I don't think the offensive line coaches were worth. I think it was too many voices in these kids' ears. And I think they just, when they got out there on the field, they just became starstruck and didn't know what to do or how to do whatever they had to do. But we'll get to that later on. Go on with your next name.
You're spot on about coaching.
Yeah.
The coaching was as bad as the play on the field.
Yeah.
And there's a direct correlation. Obviously, we all know that. Last name I got, guys, and Steve, you alluded to it, was Peppers. I don't
He's
see
gone.
Too expensive.
He's too expensive. He's going to demand too much money. He's coming off an injury as well. I think he's gonna go someplace else.
Can I ask you a question? Can I answer a question with a question though?
Sure.
If you had asked me before his injury, I would agree with everything you just said, George. But what if the market doesn't develop for him because of his injury? Another name, Carl, not to fill up your roster, but Lorenzo Carter came off an injury, had literally a stretch of 4 phenomenal games. Lorenzo Carter, where the hell have you been for 4 years? So what I'm saying is the league sometimes speaks. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying I have a crystal ball, but George, would you feel the same if he shops himself around, he comes back and he says, listen, I'll take a deal for $2 million. And if Lorenzo Carter comes back and says, I'll take a deal for $1 million, $1.5 million.
I'm willing to take those. Yeah.
Like a 1 year prove it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll take that.
That
I just
happen a lot.
I don't see his maybe it's just me, but I just don't see him doing it.
Yeah, I agree with George. I think coming back on a team friendly deal or a 1 year deal, I think is going to be a last resort for him.
Yeah.
And look, I understand your point, Steve, and it's valid, but I think he's proved himself enough where if teams try him out and he looks good, he's going to get a contract.
Yeah.
And to be fair, corner's really tough rookie year to transition. I mean, top 10 picks every year have a tough time when they first come in the league for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But safety, it's not so bad. They limit what they have to do, and especially if you play in the box like he does, it's not so. So the point I'm making is I don't think it's a really strong draft at the safety position. We'll get to that. I know I'm jumping ahead, but tight end is very strong this year. Unbelievably strong tight end position. You can get a starter on day 2 or day 3, an immediate start. offensive line, unbelievable. There's certain, I could be wrong. I'm still doing my initial research. George, I know you're pretty deep into it, but teams may pay more for him than he might even be worth, because I don't know if it's a great safety draft. Would you also agree with that?
I agree with that. And just to continue on what you're saying, and then definitely you guys need to shut me up because we are going to get into draft later on, is the fact that, Carl, you mentioned Caden Smith. And my heart dropped a little bit when you mentioned his name as far as being on the bubble, because again, he just wasn't used in this offense, and the kid has ability.
Right.
If you just gave him the chance. But no, you bring in Rudolph and you waste time, give him all that time on the field, waste it away. Evan Ingram, who, to be honest, I'm surprised you didn't mention his name. I hope he's gone this year, because I think there's just too much around him. I think it's just an air of negativity on him, and you get, a good year from him, and then you get an injury year from him, and then you get a bad year from him, and it's just a total cycle. And I don't want to sit there and give that guy a payday if that's what we're going to get. I think he needs to go to another team, get a fresh start, and be done with it. Like you said, Steve, yes, I have been looking into the tight ends. Yes, it's very strong this year. And now I'm going to shut up about it. We'll talk about it later.
I'm just going to finish that segment with one comment, and I'm glad you brought up Ingram, George, and I'll tell you why. Up until the hiring of Brian Daboll, I said he's got to. I'll drive him to the airport. That's how bad I wanted him off the roster. Okay, but you know what? I've actually taken a step back from him and seeing the type of offense that Daboll runs. Now, we don't know what kind of system he's going to put here. He said he's going to build a system around Daniel Jones, and what that includes, none of us know yet. Mm-hmm. But not for nothing. As much as we don't like Evan Ingram, think about Evan Ingram's talents in a Brian Daboll offense. That's all I'm going to say. Just, I'm putting it out there. You know what? Would I be completely shocked if he stayed? No. Because that's the kind of piece that Daboll can use.
Yeah, but then I just sit there and I look back and I just see that Philly game. Every time he's wide open, I mean,
right.
It's not necessarily the system, it's him. Can he get his mind on track? I just don't want to take that risk, especially when it's coming to his payday.
Or maybe the new coach and the new energy, maybe that's the trick. I don't know. I'm playing devil's advocate with you.
All right, throw it in there, Steve, and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
A couple quick things. First of all, Evan Ingram was the last player drafted by Jerry Reese. The last first-round pick.
Oh, okay.
One thing that Jerry Reese's players all had in common, right, was skills galore, combine, speed, athleticism, looked amazing in practice. How many times have we heard that about Ingram? Oh, his practices are amazing.
Yeah.
Practices.
Mm-hmm.
Training camp MVP.
I can tell you, yes, I can tell you from my own eyes, and I'd like to think you guys would agree, and for everyone watching, we can't wait for when one of you join us. So it's not just three of us, four of us. So it's not just my opinion. When you watch Buffalo, yeah, I know they traded for Diggs, the wide receiver, but beyond that, they have football players. They have, look at their tight end. He wasn't a first round pick. He improved every year. Again, goes back to coaching, teaching, developing. Joe Judge, oh, I'm a teacher. Yeah, you taught us how to lose again. So their tight end, Gabe Davis, we just mentioned earlier. Right. Gabe Davis, who the hell is it? Football player. Like this guy. And it wasn't just, well, we play in the cold and, they got football players. Who's the slot receiver that came from Dallas? I'm flaking out.
Oh, you're talking about
little dude.
Yeah.
I know. He's a football player.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't think of his name right now. I'm sorry.
Cole Beasley.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody's watching. Hopefully there's a lot of people watching going, Steven, you're a dingbat. But the point is, we don't know, to your point, Carl, we don't know who he wants drafted. But one thing I'll add, and then I'll finish with this, is the research that I've done. I've found some interesting facts about Shane and Dable and how far back they go. So for example, real quick, for those of you that may have heard this, but some may not, Shane was a national scout in Miami. Dable was the OC. Dable said to him, here's my wish list. One of his wish lists is, I want a tight end who could also play halfback, fullback. So I want him, he can block out of the backfield, he can catch. Why do you want that? Because he understood his scheme at the time and what he wanted. Okay, fine. So round 6 comes, Charles Clay's available, and they said, you know what? Value matches wish. It happened again more recently. Fast forward, Shane is the assistant GM in Buffalo. Dable is the OC. He says, I want a wide receiver. I want him with this height, this measurables, this speed, these hands. What do they do? Gabe Davis, they draft him. So we don't know, to your point, Carl, like the system exactly. And we don't know, the offensive coordinator is going to be, but it's going to be his system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then who does he want to keep? Because he feels some of these players will fit in, but so the answer, George, to your question is, my God, Evan Ingram to me is not a football player. He's not a guy who's going to go, but he's not that guy. He's not that guy that if you use what they do in Buffalo as the model and what he's done in Miami and other stops, yes, his offense can be creative, helps groom a great quarterback, run game. I mean, if you think just a couple short years ago, all Buffalo did was run the ball. They hardly threw it. What did he do? He said, here's what I want. I want a number 1 wide receiver. I want to draft a couple kids. To me, that's the unknown. But I think we can take from that and look at our current roster and go, you know what? Whether it's because they can't stay healthy, that's not an easy answer because sometimes it's not their fault. Like it's their, or they can't, even when they are healthy, they don't produce on the field. Shane and Dable have already said in their press conferences they love analytics. They're not married to any one player. And they said this week, there's going to be some tough choices to make. Right. Shane said, I want to get 40 million under the cap.
Yep.
You don't do that by waving a magic wand.
Nope.
Right.
So,
true.
George,
what else do you have? You have another one for us quickly?
Well, I do. And I think that none of this happens unless our quarterback is protected and he has someone who is able to guide him along, someone he can connect to. Daniel, I just want to say this to the viewers. Some of you may be okay with Daniel Jones. Some of you hate Daniel Jones. But one thing that you have to admit is that the second he got drafted number 6, he was going to have that on him for his entire career. Yeah. But what you have to understand is these kids who are sitting, waiting to be drafted, they don't know when they're going to be drafted. They don't control when they're going to be drafted. They are who they are. He was drafted number 6. You just have to accept that and put it behind you. Yes, I'm sure there was an offensive lineman you wanted or what have you. But the fact of the matter is he came into this league. He was thrown into the field week 4. 4 weeks of sitting. Kind of reminds you of somebody else, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Drafted in 2004. Let's think about it. Who was that? Eli Manning. So he comes in and he's playing an NFL football game. And yes, there are a lot of fans in Tampa, but he's still away from home. And he goes out there and he really shows us who he is. I mean, I really believe that game that we saw in Tampa is Daniel Jones. I think his time has gone on with injuries and, losing skill positions and offensive line that can't block air. I think has really hurt this kid. But there's one thing that you have to realize and you have to say and you have to admit is the fact that this kid gives his all on that field. There are a lot of A lot of quarterbacks out there, especially big name, big money quarterbacks who I'm not going to mention, who sit there and they see a defensive linebacker or an edge or a tackle coming at them and they fall to the ground and they give up. This kid, whether you like it or not, he gets hurt every once in a while, but whether you like it or not, he will do what he has to do to make yardage. He throws his receivers open. Like it or not, like him or not, that's how it goes. Well, he's had 3 offensive coordinators. I don't know how many quarterback coaches, probably 3 as well, maybe more. You never know what Judge did with coaches anyway. And now you have Shea Tierney. Am I saying that right? Tierney?
Yeah. The new quarterback coach they
Right.
had.
Shea Tierney.
Really excited about it.
So that all leads into this question. What kind of quarterback coach is he getting? He's getting a quarterback coach who was an assistant quarterback coach when Allen came along. And what we have to remember, and this is something that our new GM Shane said, it took a village. No, I'm sorry, DeBall said that. It took a village to get Allen where he is now. Look at him 4 years ago, you're going to see a lot of Daniel Jones. You give this kid time, you give him a good quarterback coach, and I'm going to pass this off to Steve because, Steve, I know you've done your research on old Shea, so why don't you just tell us about him?
Yeah, for everybody watching, if you don't know about this guy, the news just came out today. So we're taping on Wednesday. Today's Wednesday. I'm almost forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
So he's actually a big deal, this kid, 34 years old. His title in Buffalo sounded like he was pretty low in importance, assistant quarterback coach. I didn't even know some teams had assistants. I thought you have a quarterback coach and that's it, right? So there was an article where Josh Allen was interviewed and quoted. He said that Shea Tierney was the Buffalo Bills' most underpaid employee. It was an article last year, August of 2021. You can look it up. That's how integral this guy was to Josh Allen's development. They were joined at the hip. Now you may say, okay, yeah, but really, who is he? What street cred does he have? He was on Nick Saban's staff. Daboll called him up. They called him up and said, we'd like you. Because remember, Daboll knew him from his time at Saban. So there's some interesting stories that he gives some about how he had to walk into Nick Saban's office. They had just won a huge game. It was actually national championship. They won national championship. He walks in, he says, listen, I'm going to Buffalo. And Saban shook his hand and said, you know what? I'm great with that. I wish you the best. I know you're ready for the NFL. He was Daboll's right hand. Even though he was the assistant quarterback coach, Daboll brought him in. And by all accounts, and this is, interviews I've read, articles, this isn't me making this up. He was Daboll's right hand. So what I love is his track record, Josh Allen, what he said about him, what I've read. But here's the other thing that I love about it, and this goes to some of the stuff you've been saying, George, is, and so not to get off topic, if anybody watches me on Twitter, I actually mentioned this today. I love that Daboll is coming in with an eye to the future and saying, I want to build bench strength. Because to me, this is a guy that, let's say we get a great OC. Because I've heard some of the voices out there today talk about, well, do we want this guy? Do we want that guy? And then let's say the guy has a great year and he's gone after a year. I agree. You're happy that you got a great year out of him. Maybe they did work some magic with Daniel, but then what do we do? Bench strength. So Daboll seems to be doing, hopefully, what Joe Judge professed from day one. Oh, I'm a teacher and I'm going to bring a staff. I mean, to me, there's a lot to be excited about with this Shea Tierney hire.
That's a good job, Steve, because I didn't know as much about him until I just heard that. So, I feel a little bit more comfortable with it now. The only thing I'm really going to say about all this, to kind of wrap this up here, guys, is, George, I was at that game in Tampa, Daniel Jones' first game. And I got to tell you, the feeling went from, all right, what do we have here, to, we're not out of this game, regardless of what the score was, and what always felt like we were in the game. And we haven't,
Absolutely.
as Giant fans, we haven't felt that in a long time. And what really struck me about him that game was that he raised the level of everybody else's play that game.
Mhm.
That to me is a leader. That's your franchise quarterback. And I agree with you. I think that is the real Daniel Jones. I think what we've seen here the last few years is a quarterback that has the weight of the world on his shoulders because the team isn't getting it done. And he's trying to make plays and he's trying to force plays and he's trying to make things
Forcing him.
happen.
Yeah.
So, and I think, and there's a lot that goes into that. We can go into that in a separate show. But my point is, I think he's got it. Do I think he's got Joe Burrow moxie? I won't say that. But I think he's got the tools and the command to carry this team through this rebuild and to be the guy. I do. I think I'm curious to see if they give him a line and then they build a system to accent his strengths. And then let's see let's take our shot.
Can I just give two thoughts and then I want to throw it back to George and see what you guys have to say. I'm going to give you one positive and one negative.
Go.
Positive. I love what John Mara said. Mr. Mara said, we really messed this kid up.
Mhm.
At least half the people watching right now, hopefully everybody knows what I'm talking about. It was great to hear. It was great to hear some accountability in the organization because even though he didn't get specific, we all know what he's talking about.
Right.
We know who he's talking about. But I'll give you a negative. What's going on with his neck? I know you don't know the answer. Neither do I.
Nobody knows.
Right.
We've all had injuries. We're all men of a certain age. Played football, back, neck. It's, so I look forward to as we get closer to the draft and we dig in a little bit more and we start learning about who the offensive coordinator is and his philosophy. And listen, we're going to see some cuts. We're going to see, and it's exciting in a way to me.
Mhm.
I wonder who the backup QB is going to be. Anyway, I think I look forward to future conversations, guys. I look forward to having some guests on who we can get some of their opinions. But George, what do you think about that? The pro and the con. Love what John
Yeah,
said, but I'm worried about it.
you hit on a huge subject right there, talking about his neck. I mean, there have been many, football players, regardless of what position you want to talk about, that have had to retire early due to neck injuries. And then you have Peyton Manning, that Colts thought he was done due to his neck injury. And he turned around and played, 3 more years and that's after his, 14-year career with the Colts. He played 3 more years with the Broncos. Yeah, neck injury is a tricky one. And it's sad because, I really feel like, he deserved a little bit better than that. Everybody can throw in the fact that, he doesn't slide or isn't. Yeah, but he's trying to get yards. If a running back runs out of bounds, instead of getting 4 more yards, we yell at him. We get pissed at him. This kid is trying to get, a few more yards on a run, and we're pissed because he didn't slide. I think as far as that goes, he deserved a little bit better with that. And if he does, recover fully from this neck injury, which pray every day he does, I just want this kid to have some consistency. This kid with the changes going on every single year, and then, everybody's Dave Gettleman comes in and he's like, we're going to get hog mollies, and he gets slouches instead. I really feel like, Daniel Jones, if we're going to make this his year to prove himself, then give him something to prove himself with.
Yeah.
He cannot do it by himself. He spent 4 years trying.
Yeah.
So give him something.
So in closing, I'm just going to say one thing. Steve, you mentioned the neck injury. Both Shane and Dayball both said, we're rolling with Daniel Jones. He's going to be our guy this year. We like him. We're going to work with him. I have to believe behind the scenes, they've already looked at the medicals for them to say that.
That's
And
cool.
they're confident with what they saw, and they're confident he's going to be on the field.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it with that. But, still a long way to go, guys. Long way to go in the offseason. It's going to be a great offseason, going to be an exciting offseason. And again, everybody, we thank you for your participation. Please subscribe to the YouTube page. We'll put that out there, and follow us on the Twitter page at Giants_Zone 2022. And guys, thank you all again for your time here. We really appreciate this. And George, Steve, looking forward to going further with you guys on this. Really excited about it. And you know what, guys? Let's grow this. Let's